we should start now. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this second part of the NITheCS Mini-School on introduction to programming with Python. And again, we are fortunate to have Professor Kanshukan Rajaratnam with us today for the second part of his lecture series. And just to remind you, Professor Rajaratnam is the director of the Institute for Data Science and Computational Thinking at the University of Stellenbosch. So he's perfectly positioned to introduce you to the programming skills that you're all keen to learn. Yeah? And I know that last week we had a double session because we introduced a kind of a catch-up lecture or session in the evening to make sure that everybody had their right environment in place. And I hope that by today everybody is set up with all the necessary tools. So Kanshu, since every minute counts, if you want to learn, you're most than welcome to start sharing the screen and begin with your second lecture. Yeah, and to the participants, please make use of the Q&A facility to ask questions. Yeah, and we will monitor it and react accordingly. So thank you very much, Kanshu. You're most than welcome to start.
Thank you, Francesco. So I'm going to continue from the last lecture because we've got such a short time. You know, maybe there'll be a slight recap, but largely a continuation from the last lecture. So the way I enter Python is not, go and click on Python on Windows, but I enter through the command window. So I type cmd.exe on the bottom there, and the command prompt opens up. This allows me to then go into the folder where my lect folder is. Remember, we downloaded some folders earlier or last week. So I'm just going into my folders as we did last week. The data, cd-lect directory. Okay, so I am in the folder where I want to be, where all the CSV files are being held, right? If you don't go into this folder, then you'd have to add the path every time where your CSV files are being held. And over here now, I can just type in Python, and it takes me into the Python platform. Oh, yeah. Right. So I'm going to, give me one moment. I presume you can see all what I did there. I'm just gonna stop sharing and then share just that screen. Right. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen now, which has got the command prompt, and I've gone into Python, right? And if you remember last time, I always ran certain libraries. So let me go run those libraries. Those libraries were, where's my black window? From data science, import star, space star. That will run for a while. That's just importing a library. Then import numpy as np. That's another library. Then I'm going to copy and paste the next two ones. It's just easier for me to do that. Import matplotlib, which is a library that allows me to plot graphs, and then import plot style, right? I don't need to really do the last two ones because those libraries are not going to be used in this lecture, but I just have it as a header in everything that I do at the moment, right? And in the folder where I am, there is a skyscrapers.csv file. So I'm going to read that file into a table called skyscrapers. So let me go through what each of the, what I mean by the line that I've just typed in. So skyscrapers on the left-hand side before the equal sign is the name of a table that I'm going to create. So I'm telling Python, create a table called skyscrapers, and I could put in any name I want. I could put in Kanshu and not necessarily skyscrapers, right? And then I tell it to create a table by reading the information from the skyscrapers.csv file. And I've put skyscrapers.csv in single quotes over there because it's text, right? It's not a number. It's a string. That's the phrase I was looking for. But if you're not in the right folder, then you'd have to put in the full path to skyscrapers. So, your path might look like sorry. Let me do it, C dot dot. And I'll have to do double slash instead of single slash, users, double slash, Kanshu. I don't know where it is on your computer, but I know where the file is on my computer, right? And skyscrapers.csv, single quotes, close brackets, and oh, why did it do that? Okay, I made a mistake somewhere on my path, but if I didn't make that mistake, then it would give me the right name. I don't know where I made the mistake on my path. Essentially, what happened was instead of C colon, I had put in C D. Right, so here's my mistake. Right, there could be other mistake too. Okay, so with the path, it went and read the file skyscrapers.csv and it stored it in the fold in a table name called skyscrapers. Now, if I type skyscrapers, it prints out the table, right? It prints out the first 10 lines of the table, and then it tells me there are another 190 lines that is not displaying on the screen, right? So there are 200 lines, rows of information here. And what is this table? This table has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. The first column is the name of buildings, right? So One World Trade Center is a building in New York City. Willis Tower is a building in Chicago. These are all tall buildings in the US. The second column is material. And this indicates the material that was used to build the building, right? So One World Trade Center was, they used composite material. Willis Tower used steel, and some others like Trump International Hotel and Tower used concrete, right? And then the third column is city, where it indicates where the building is located. The fourth column is height. It indicates in meters the height of the building. And the fifth column is completed, the year the building was completed, right? And now if I want to look at this table and I want to do some things with it where I can analyze the data, I could do that. So let's look at this table and only pick out the data where the city is Los Angeles, right? So then I would write skyscrapers because that's the name of the table. So I'm telling Python, go to skyscrapers, the table, and where the column name or column label is city, pick out only the rows with Los Angeles in it, right? And if I press enter, it gives me all the buildings with only Los Angeles. It gives me all 5 columns, and it gives me all the buildings in Los Angeles. And you can see there are 11 buildings because 10 are shown on the screen. There's one row that's omitted, another was not shown on the screen. It shows the material. It shows by looking at city that city is Los Angeles, and that's what we had asked to do, or the instruction that was given, and it indicates the heights for the rest and the completion date or completion year for the respective building. Right now, when I type the previous command where I say skyscrapers dot where. And then I say for the city, give me back all the rows of Los Angeles. This is just an instruction to Python, right? So all Python does is then bring back this table, bring back the result and prints out the result on the screen, right? But this does not store it into another table. So if I want to store this table in memory, I will say A, and I'm going to call it, let's say A is the new table equals. And now what I'm doing is I'm telling Python, create a new table. I can call it anything else. I can call it Kanshu if I want, right? In this new table called Kanshu, what I want you to do is populate it with information from the table skyscraper where city is equal to Los Angeles. Now, if I press enter, Python doesn't bring back anything to the screen. All it does is it populates a table called Kanshu and it holds it in its memory, right? Now, if I type Kanshu, it prints out the information to the screen, right? So if I put an equal sign, it's an instruction for you to do something and maybe hold it in the memory. If I don't have an equal sign, I'm just telling it to inform me or print it to the screen, right? What if instead of city being Los Angeles, I want where I want where the name of the building is Empire State Building, right? So I will say, instead of city, I will say name, because that's the name of the column. And then I will write Empire State Building. I hope I'm going to get the spelling right for Empire State Building. Right? So in other words, go to the table skyscraper and bring back to the screen where in the column name, bring back all rows where the column name, under column name, the variable is equal to Empire State Building. And there's of course only one Empire State Building. And so it brings back one row with all the information associated with Empire State Building. Now, instead of writing this command, let's say I write a code where I have I change the capital letter or I make one slight change. Let's say instead of a capital S, I put in a small s, and if I press enter, it doesn't bring back any results, right? It only gives me the column labels: name, material, city, height, completed. It doesn't bring back the information about Empire State Building. And that's because in this case, because it's a string, Python cares about whether something is capitalized or not. So Empire State Building with small s is not the same as Empire State Building with big S. What if I want to do something else? Let's say I want to look at all the buildings in New York City, right? So I would write skyscrapers. So go to the table skyscrapers, and where city equals New York City, bring back all the information. So let's do that first, right? So it gives me information about all the buildings in New York City. But let's say now I want to order this by the year of when it was built or completed, right? So what I would then do is I would say skyscrapers. Let me not type it out, it just takes too long. So I have the same instruction in the front, skyscrapers where city is equal to New York City. And then after that, I will tell it to sort. So it's dot sort by the variables in the column completed, right? And if I do that, if you look at the previous table, you'll see it's not sorted out by the column completed. You have 2014, you have 1931, and then you have 2009, right? But if I do this, it orders it from the earliest to the latest building. So the oldest building to the youngest building, right? So 1909 comes out on top, and then 1930, 1929, etc. Right? So it brings out the same information as when I told it to bring back only the information about the cities where the city variable is equal to New York City, but I also asked it to sort itself out in some manner using certain variable. What if I don't want to have it ascending order, right? So here I have it from going from 1909 to 1931 and probably 2014, which the data is not shown here. What about if I want to have it as in descending order? So I would write descending equals true. And look at my syntax, right? So I have the word descending, all small letters, equals true with a capital letter. I'm not sure if true with a small letter will work. And if I do that, then it brings back all the information about the buildings are located in New York City, but it orders it by the youngest building, so the highest completed year to the lowest completed year. So 2015 comes out on top, and then 2014, 2013, 2011, 2010, etc. Right? Now I want to run the same command, but with true being small letter. If I do that, it tells me it gives me an error because true with a small letter is not defined in Python, right? So I have to write true with a T being a capital letter, because Python has it's coded in with true being capital letter T means, you know, do it with this way where descending is what I want you to do, right? So I'm just going to quickly look at any questions in the chat room. Q&A. How did the buildings how did it sort the buildings completed in 2015? It didn't sort the buildings completed in 2015. It sorted all the buildings in New York City by the year completion. And 2015 was the youngest one, so it went on top when I asked it to sort it by completed year with it being in descending order. Cool. I don't know if there are any other questions, right? Okay, so I want to now go to another part where we'll just work with tables again, right? So we're just going to do a little bit more of the same thing, right? So I want to, sorry, I just want to make this smaller on my computer so I can read my notes at the same time. So I want to, oh man, I can't read my notes. Okay, so then in the same folder where you are, there is a file called NBA Salary, right? So I'm going to go to NBA Salaries, and I'm going to read that file. And because I have an equal sign, it doesn't bring back anything to the screen. It just reads it and stores it under a table called NBA, right? If I type NBA, it lists out the whole table. So it lists out the top 10 rows and it tells me the other 477 rows are omitted for now. So it doesn't fill up the screen, right? But if you look at this table, I don't like the fact, so let's look what this table is about. These are basketball player list, right? So the first column is the name of basketball players. The second column is the position they play at. So C is center. I don't know what SF and PG stands for, and I don't know what PF stands for. I guess F stands for forward. PG stands for point guard. I don't know what the S stands for, but the second column is some shorthand for the position they play in their team. The third column is teams to which they belong. So in this case, it's only showing Atlanta Hawks, but there are many other teams in here, right? And the fourth column is the salary they earned in million in the 2015-2016 season, right? So if it's all 2015-2016 season, I mean, I can just call this column salary instead of calling it, you know, 15-16 salary, right? So how do I change the name of a column label? So I want to change the column label to salary. So what I would do is NBA equals NBA dot relabeled 3, salary. So let's try to understand what this is doing. So create a table NBA by taking the existing table NBA and relabel column 3. Column 3 is always the fourth column, right? Because Python counts columns from 0. So the first column is column 0, second column is column 1, third column is column 2, and the fourth column is column 3, right? So in this case, we want it to be the fourth column. So we write the number 3, and I wanted to change the label of that column number 3 to salary. So in other words, I want this 15-16 salary to change to salary. And if I press enter, why is my enter not working? Okay. So it creates a new table called NBA with relabeled column name. And if I write NBA now, you could see the fourth column is changed to salary instead of 15-16 salary, right? Okay. What about if I want to just get information on point guards, right?
Can't
so
you,
I want to create a table called point guard.
For interrupting, yeah. Kanchu, there is a comment in the chat whether you could move your terminal window a touch higher because they struggle to see what's happening at the bottom of the of the screen.
Oh, can they see it now?
but maybe also a suggestion to the viewer who made this comment. You can also enlarge your Zoom screen, yeah, and maybe that allows the missing line to come in. Yeah, no, thank you, Kanshukan. Sorry.
Cool. So I've got it around, yeah, around the screen. The sharing. I've shared my command prompt screen, so this is the maximum that you could see. So yeah, it might be on the user side where they've got to maximize their Zoom screen. Okay, so let's say I want to create a table called point guards, right? Point guards, right? And in this table, I want to bring back everything from the table MBA. And I only want to include information about players who play in that position, right? So you could see on the second column is position, and that indicates where each player plays. So now I want to create a table called point guards where from the column position, I want to back where that position, where the column position is equal to PG, right? So there, because PG indicates point guards. And if I do press enter, it creates a new table. If I say point guards and enter, it will bring back to the screen. It will print to the screen all the players who are point guards. And you can see they play in different teams. There's 2 point guards in Atlanta Hawks. There are 4 point guards in Boston Celtics, etc., right? And their salaries are widely different. You can see in the 4th column that Jeff Teague earns $8 million per year, not too shabby. Kemba Walker earns $12 million per year, while Terry Rozier only earns 1.82 US million a year. Not good at all, right? For him, at least. So I've created a new table called point guards, right? Because this table is only point guards, the second column makes no sense to keep the second column, right? Because we know everybody's a point guard. So I want to get rid of the second column. So how do I do that? I could say point guards, drop, right? What is the drop position? Right. And what I'm doing now is asking it to drop from the table point guards, the column position, right? And so it brings back to the screen or prints to the screen only 3 columns. It doesn't print out the column position. Now, if I type point guards again, will I get 3 columns or will I get 4 columns? Can you type it in the chat room? So the question is, if I type point guards again, it'll bring back the table to the screen, or it'll print the table to the screen. Will it have 4 columns or 3 columns? So some people say 4, some people say 3. Okay, so I'm gonna try enter, and I only know once I press enter, it brings back 4 columns. So why does it bring back 4 columns when I had previously written this, right? Asked it to drop position. And the reason for that is when I did this, I didn't ask it to change the table point guards. I asked it to drop position and only print to the screen. So the memory that is on your computer, it still holds the table point guards with 4 columns, right? So this part, when I do this point guards dot drop position, it's only prints it to the screen. But if I wanted to save it on its memory as a table point guards with only 3 columns, in other words, without the column position, I'd have to tell it instructions to do so, which is point guards is equal to point guards dot drop position. In other words, create a table called point guards. That's the point guards on the left, and I could call it anything I want. And on the right, I have equals point guards, use the table point guards and drop the column position. Now, if I do that, and then I type point guards, I can't spell, it'll give me 3 columns, right? Because I saved it using the equal sign previously. Right. Right. What if I want to take this point guards and I want to sort it by, let's say, salary, right? And I want to sort it by descending because I want to see who earns the most, right? So now it takes the information as it is and sorts it out according to salaries and in a descending manner, right? So I can see Chris Paul from Los Angeles Clippers earns 21 million, and Derrick Rose earns from Chicago Bulls earns 20.0931 million, right? What about if I didn't have this descending equals to true? I have it in reverse order in increasing fashion, right? And compared to Chris Paul, who earns 21 million, I see that Phil Pressey from Phoenix Suns earns about 50,000 or $0.05 million. So not great salary compared to the highest earners, right? So there's wide variance, or wide range of salaries that happens among point guards, depending on the team they play and of course how good they are. Right. Okay, so I'm going back to the table NBA. All right, so here's an old table that I had saved as NBA with all 4 columns. Remember, it was only in point guards where I dropped the column position, right? And if I say NBA dot drop position, it brings back 3. It prints out 3 what do you call it, columns. What if I, instead of doing that, I say where position PG, right? So in other words, go to the table MBA and bring back where position is equal to PG, and I need a single quote there, and it gives me back only the players who are point guards, right? What if I wanted to bring these 2 together? In other words, I wanted to drop the column position, and I want to, what do you call it, only bring back where position is equal to PG, right? So I could do something like this, right? Drop position where so in other words, I want Python to print to the screen where it only brings back information about point guards, and then it doesn't also have the column position. What would happen if I type this? Right, so I'm combining two instructions at one go. So yeah, I'm not, sorry, this is, yeah, I'm not assigned a new table. Can we use a different command other than drop? I'm sure there are other ways to do this, but here we want to use drop, right? So if I do this, it'll give me an error, because what happens is it goes to the table NBA, it drops the column position, and then it looks at the new information and looks for the column position to find out who are the point guards, and it can't do that, right? And therefore it's an error because you've already dropped the column position. So what we have to do is reorder this, right? So, okay, I have to manually do it, right? Go to NBA table, under position, look for all the point guards, and then drop the column position, right? So the order of doing this matter, because you want to use the condition, where first before you drop the column. If you drop the column first, then it wouldn't know where to find the condition for that column, right? And then now what it does, it brings back all the information about the players who are point guards, and it doesn't show the column position because you asked it to drop it, right? Okay, so I'm just also looking at the chat room, and I think it's fine. Okay. Where can I download this information? So you've got to go to the previous lecture, and you've got to follow the instructions there, right? The instructions are there on where you can download the material. Thank you, Ilya. So there, Ilya's posted it. You can use that, right? Okay, cool. Okay, so now, so in this example, I joined two instructions together. A where condition as well as asking to drop a column, and I did that in one go. But the example I was using, I have to use the condition first before I drop it, because if I drop the column and the condition uses that column, then it's not able to do that. So you've got to be careful how you order the condition and the drop function. Right. Okay. I'm just going through my notes online, and okay. So I just want to do some things with strings, right? So okay, this is a string. Right? A string is just a whole lot of, it's a word or letters and numbers put together. You can't add strings. You can, they're just alphanumeric characters put together, right? So I can't say what I'm trying to say. So I can tell it, say hello Kanshu, and it tells me back hello Kanshu. And I can write any strings here, right? Hello Ilya, and it prints back whatever I put in single quotes. I can also, I believe, use double quotes. Okay. And if I use double quotes, it still works, right? But it just brings it back as it prints out to the screen with single quotes. Why does this matter? Let's say I wanted to write something like, please don't go, right? Now, Python will get confused between the opening quote, the apostrophe, and the end quote, right? So if I do this, it doesn't make sense. The instructions don't make sense. So if I press enter, it says invalid syntax. So in order for it to make sense, I should use a double quotes at the ends, right? And now it knows with the double quotes that the string starts straight after that. And then it comes to a single quotes and it knows it's an apostrophe, and then it ends the string when it meets the the closing inverted commas. And in this case, it will print out, please don't go, in double quotes. Right? So double quotes and single quotes matter, whether depending on what you have in between in your quote, right? Can I add two strings together? Let's say I want to add straw and berry, right? And if I do this, it puts the two strings together. So it prints out strawberry, right? What about if I want to do something like my name, Kanshu plus Raj, right? And Raj is my last name. So I want a space in between. How could I do this? Can somebody tell me? Let's see in the chat room what you may be saying. So I want a space between Kanshu and Raj. Anyone? Okay, I don't see anything. Maybe add, okay, so Sibaliso, great. Andy, great. Okay, so, and Vasily, great. So all of you are right. So I could do something like this, right? Kanshu plus, and I put a space here in front of Raj inside the quotes, and then it'll give me Kanshu Raj. Or I could do, I put in another quote with a single space, and I could put Raj, right? So there's multiple ways of doing this. I can either insert it in one of the existing quotes, or I can add just another space using quotes, right? What else do I want to show here? So I can't take a string and multiply it by a floating number. In other words, something with a fraction, right? What does it mean to multiply half by 5.5? But what I can do is multiply it by an integer. And if I do multiply by integer, it just repeats it the same number of times as the integer. So in other words, if I write ha times 5, it just goes ha, 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 right? So if you wanted to create a storybook and you wanted to create some sort of laughter, you just have to write ha once, and then you could multiplied by many times to indicate laughter. Right? Okay, there are certain other stuff that I'm looking at. I don't want to go through that. I'm just going to try to do the important part in the mini school. Okay, so so far what have we done? Right. So in the last lecture and this lecture, we learned to read tables from existing files, and of course these files are beautiful files because they've got the tables perfectly, populated in the files. So we read the tables and then we manipulated the tables somehow, right? So we looked at it ascending order and descending order. We looked at it, let's say, we dropped columns, etc. Now I want to look at arrays, right? So an array is just like a vector, right? It's got certain number of cells, and each cell is some number or some string. In our case, we are going to just largely deal with numbers. So let's say my array. So I'm creating a new array, and I'm going to use the function called make array, right? And I'm going to make this array such that there are 4 cells. So it's almost like a vector, and each cell contains a number. And I want the 4 cells to contain the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right? 3 and 4. Right? And if I ask it to print back to the screen, it tells me there's an array with 4 cells. In the first cell, it contains number 1. In the second cell, it contains number 2. In the third cell, it contains number 3, etc. Don't worry about the d type equals into 64. That's just the data type that exists in the array, right? So I can do other numbers, right? So I think it's always nicer to do different numbers. Let's do that. So if I say my array now, it tells me the first cell is 10, the second cell is 22, the third cell is 13, and the fourth cell is 4, just as I had instructed it to do. Now I can do various stuff with my array, right? So I take my array, and let's say I want to add 1 to every single cell in my array. And all I have to do is to say my array plus 1, and then what it would go is it would go to each cell and add 1 to it. So from 10, 22, 13, and 4, it went to now 11, 23, 14, and 5. Remember, I haven't stored it under my array. I just added it, asked it to add it and print it back to the screen. What if I wanted to multiply each element of that array or each cell in that array by some number, right? So I want to multiply each number in that array by 3, right? So 10 times 3, 22 times 3, 13 times 3, and 4 times 3. And that gives me 30, 66, 39, and 12. I can also do other things, other operations, right? So what about my array to the power of 2? In other words, I want each cell to be raised to the power of 2, and that's what happens: 10 squared, 22 squared, 13 squared, and 4 squared, which is equal to 100, 484, 169, and 16. And this is useful when you are dealing with a whole lot of numbers that have similarities in them, or if you want to take a column from a table and you want to manipulate that column, right? And I will come to an example later on. Let's create another array, right? My array, let's call the other one your array, right? And I'm going to create another array called your array.
Can you please scroll up a little bit? Because people are asking to scroll you up.
I can't scroll. Oh, sorry. Okay, I can do this actually. Sorry. Sorry. Does that help?
I think so.
Cool. Okay. Gundo, you can just say yes or no. Does that help? Okay, Rosa said yes. Okay, so thanks for that. So I'm going to create another array called your array, right? And I'm going to give it some numbers. Let's give it some numbers, 2, 7. I'm just putting in some random numbers. If I look at your array, it gives me the same, those 4-element array. Now I can add my array and your array. And what it does is it adds the 2 arrays element by element. So my array was I forgot what, I think it was 10. So 10, and your array, the first element was 2, so 10 plus 2 is 12. My second element was 22. Your array's element was 7, so 22 plus 7 is 29, etc., etc., etc. Right? So I can add 2 arrays together. Let's create another array, right? Another array equals make array. And in this array, I'm going to have only 3 elements. Sorry, right? Right. So my array has 4 elements, which is just the name of an array. Your array is another name which has 4 elements, and another array is the name of an array that I created. I could call it anything else. In this case, I call it another array, and it's got 3 elements. What happens if we try to add my array, which has 4 elements, with another array which has 3 elements? And it tells me it cannot add it because operands could not broadcast together with shapes 4 and 3, meaning 4 meaning the 4 elements, and the second one having 3 elements. So you can't add 2 arrays that have a different number of elements in it. Right. What else do I want to know about arrays? Okay, so I want to do some other basic stuff. Right. So you'll see just now why arrays are useful, because I'm going to take values from columns and I'm going to manipulate them in order to find some answers, right? In order for me to do that, I am actually just going to, before I go into that section, I just want to see if there's any questions. There doesn't seem to be any questions. How did it sort the buildings completed? I answered that already. And okay, so I'm going to the next section, right? So there is what do you call it? I read a file called NBA earlier, right? And in this NBA file, I want to work out the salary difference between 2 teams. Let's say one team is the Golden Warriors and the other one is Toronto Raptors, right? So I want to work out the average salary difference between Golden Warriors and Toronto Raptors. So how could I do this? Right. So one way to do it is, remember, I have this table NBA already read into my memory, right? I could create a new table Warriors, right? From the table NBA, I just have to get the spelling right, because if I get the spelling wrong, then Python won't understand it, right? So from the column team, I wanted to take out only Golden State Warriors. Okay, so let me move my cursor up a bit. Warriors. Okay, and then if I say Warriors now, oh, it didn't. So I made a spelling mistake somewhere. Okay, I can see why. Instead of Warriors, I wrote Warriors, right? So in other words, go to the table NBA, where team, in look under column team, and wherever it says Golden State Warriors, bring back all the information. Now let me type Warriors, and it brings back all the information about all the team members in Golden State Warriors, right? Okay. Then I can just say select the salary, right? So if I say Warriors, I get to get this name right, and I say select, I tell it to go select only the column salary. So it brings back the column salary, and you can see the salaries are 15.501 million, 14.260 million, etc., etc., etc. It's the same as the 4th column that you see, higher up the screen, right? Okay. So I can use the function select to just select one column, right? So warriors.select, and then in brackets salary in quotes means go to the table Warriors and select the column salary and bring that back, right? So it prints out all the salaries from that column, right? I want to do something else now. I want to convert this into an array, right? And the way I convert these numbers into an array is I go to Warriors, because in the table Warriors, go to column salary. And what it does now is it converts the column that's found in, under the column label salary and converts it into an array. Now, I want you to look at the difference between these two, the last two instructions, right? Cool. The first one is warriors.select salary. What that does is it just selects the column and brings it back as if it's a single column table. So it's got a label on top, right? So it says salary on top, and then it says all the numbers. The second command is warriors.column salary. There, what it's saying is go to this column that is called salary, right? And bring back all the data in there in that column as an array, right? So it doesn't have a label. It doesn't say salary as the first entry. It just brings back all the numbers, and you can see the numbers going from 15.501, etc., all the way down to 0.2897555, right? So this array contains all the information about salaries for Golden State Warriors, right? Now, let's say I want to find the average of this salary, right? And what I could do is use a function. Remember, I installed NumPy, or imported NumPy, and I said import NumPy as NP first thing in the lecture, right? So the library NumPy exists there as NP. From that library NumPy, I want it to call up a function called average, and then I'll put it in brackets what I want it to average, and I can put an array name here. And the array here is warriors.column salary. And it tells me the average salary from that column is 6.72 million. So because we know that column comes from a table consisting of Golden State Warriors, we know the average salary now for the Golden State Warriors in 2015-2016 season is 6.72 million. Right. Now we want to know what is the salary for, similarly salaries for the Raptors, right? The Toronto Raptors. So I'm going to create a table for the Raptors. NBA sorry, what is the team and Toronto? Do I need capital letters? No. Toronto Raptors, right? So I'm creating a table called Raptors by going to the table NBA and bringing back from the column team, where team is equal to Toronto Raptors. And then if I type Raptors here, you'll see it only consists of players who are in Toronto Raptors, right? So we can do similar thing that we did earlier to work out the average, right? So we can say NP, because we want to work out the average between the Golden State Warriors and the Toronto Raptors, right? So if I say NP average Warriors dot column salary. Okay, let me just move the cursor up so you can see this. Right. So this part tells me, brings back the average from the column on the Warriors table, and the next part brings back the average from the Raptors table. And so the difference should be the salary difference between the Golden State Warriors and Toronto Raptors. And you can see from the answer there that on average, Golden State Warriors earn $2.32 million more than the Toronto Raptors, right? And so here I've taken a table called MBA and I'm manipulating it to find out some information or to infer some information, which I can use for maybe some policies or something like that. In this case, I wanted to know what is the average salary difference between Golden State Warriors and the average salary of Toronto Raptors, and I worked that out to be 2.327 million. Right? So if I wanted to try to place a promising player into a team, on average, I might try to place them in Golden State Warriors first before I try Raptors, just because the salary on average might be higher there than the Raptors, and by placing him or her, I get what do you call it, a kickback, right? Yeah. So I want to quickly look at questions and answers to see if there's any questions here before I go on to the next section. How do you view the omitted rows? So Ashona, so that's a good question. So I usually run this on Anaconda, and on Anaconda, I mean on Jupyter Notebook. So when I run it on Jupyter Notebook, I can view all the rows. I'm not sure how I do that on when I use command prompt. And I'm using command prompt here because it's easier for me to install or give instruction for installation. So Ashona, what I will do is I'll find that answer to that and hopefully tell it to you in the next lecture. Unless, do you know, Ilya? How do I display the whole table?
Sorry, do you want to display the whole table or what?
Yeah, I want to display the whole table rather than just part of a table. Then the first 10 lines.
You mean the seven rows submitted?
Yeah.
You can display kind of the top and the bottom, at least in the pandas.
Yeah,
so you can do like table.head and how many lines from the top, and table.bottom. I'm sure that there is a command to display everything, but you know, sometimes tables could be pretty large, so you should be careful with the comments like that.
Yeah, so what Ilya is saying is, if I imported a library called Panda, I can then use that. There are functions in that library that allows me to, you know, look at the top few rows and the bottom few rows, and I can tell it how many rows I want to observe from the top and how many I want to observe from the bottom, right? In this case, I'm not using pandas. I'm using a special library that was created by Berkeley just for educational purpose, and I don't think they have a way to view the whole table, at least on command prompt. If for the people who are using what do you call it, Jupyter Notebook, if you say something like, let's see, sorry, let's do it this way. If you do something like nba show open bracket close bracket, then it will show everything, right? But it won't do that on command prompt. Okay, so let me go to the next one. Okay, I just wanted to, so what I did in the last few minutes was, first I showed you how to convert a column from a table into an array, right? And then I used that array to do some operation on it. In this case, I wanted to find out an average of the elements in that array, right? And I used those functions or those code to figure out how I could work out the average difference in salary between two teams. Right? So you could see why array is quite useful. When I type the NBA in, I don't get the Toronto Raptor table back. That's because I saved so I created a new table called Raptors. So to answer the question on the chat room, I created a new table called Raptors with only the Toronto Raptors. Oh, okay. So that was a different problem. Okay, great. Okay, I want to go back to creating arrays, right? So there's another way to create arrays. The first way to create arrays, I told you, was something like this, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And here I created an array from 0 to 7, right? What if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to use a function that exists in NumPy. So I call up the library NumPy because I imported NumPy as NP, right? In other words, every time, instead of writing out NumPy, I can just write NP dot arrange, and let's say I type 8. And what this does, and I hope I've spelled everything correctly, okay. What this does is it creates an array from 0 all the way to 8, but not including 8, right? So if I only put one number in it and one integer in it, it will create an array all the way from 0 all the way to the integer before that number, right? So in other words, it creates an array of 0 all the way to 7. And the reason why it does that is it creates an array of with 8 elements. And the first element is 0. So of course, the last element would be 7, right? So that's one way to create an array. What if I wanted an array, something that looks like this, right? np.arrange, right? Let's say I wanted an array that starts from 5 all the way to 10, right? So I wanted an array that goes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 integer values from 5 all the way to 10. So then I would input two different numbers into the function. The first number informs it where to start. In other words, the first element must be 5. The second element must be the ending element, but not including that number. So in other words, it would go all the way to 10 because it does not include the last number 11. What about if I wanted to create an array that is not nicely ordered with increasing by one integer of 1? What about if I wanted to increase it by integer of 3, right? So I would do np.arrange, right? Let's say I want to start at 5, go all the way to 21, and so actually let's start at 3, right? Or 6, because I want to do something after that. And let's say I wanted to go from 6 all the way to 21, increasing by 3. And so remember where it starts? It starts at 6. The last number is 21, but not including 21. And I want each element to increase by 3. So it gives me 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Right? So I've created an array that goes from 6 all the way to 18, and each element increases by 3. What if I wanted 21 as the last number, right? Instead of 18. So I want 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. Then what I would do is I would just ask it the last number, not include the second information to be 22, right? So it'll be 6, go all the way from 6 to 22, not including 22, and increase it by 3 after each element. So this would be 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. Right. Let's see, what else do I want to do? What if I wanted to create a range from, let's say, 1 to 2, increasing by 0.1, right? So in other words, start from 1, that's the first element. The second element will increase from the first element by 0.1. In other words, it'll be 1.1, then it'll be 1.2, then 1.3, etc., all the way to 2, but not including 2. And if I wanted to do that, all I would do is, I would type that code in. Right? What if I wanted to include 2? Then all I would do is make this number slightly greater than 2, and then the last number would now be 2, because it would go all the way to the last, the second input, but not including that. Okay. I'm just looking at what the question is. Okay, what is the effect of using square bracket? So I didn't use square bracket, did I? No. So let's try it. I don't think it works, but maybe. So yeah, it tells you that object is not subscriptable. So what it does is when you use the function range, it's looking for a round bracket, right, and not a square bracket. Okay. So the last thing I want to do, right, and then I'll open up for questions. What I want to do now is to create a table, right? So far we've been reading information from files. What about instead of reading information from files, let's create a table. Let's create a table with 2 columns. The first column being, let's say, street names, and the second column being, let's say, number of blocks from where we are, right? So let's call the table itself streets, and then I say make array, open bracket, right? And then I can give it, a couple of street names, right? So Main Road, I don't know, Bree Street, Long Street, Loop Street, right? So these are 4 street names, and I've just asked it to create an array of these 4 streets, right? And now if I want to, so now there's an array with strings in its elements, with 4 different names: main, bre, long, and loop. So so far it's only an array. I haven't created a table yet. Now I want to create a table, right? Let's call it city, right, for ease of thing. So city, create a table, open bracket, close bracket, with columns, right? And I'll explain the syntax just now. Let's call it streets with all capital letters. And I wanted to populate it with streets. Okay. So I want you to look at the instruction I gave earlier, which was streets equals make array, main, bre, long, and loop. And the name of that array is small letter streets, right? And then when I type small letter streets out, it gave me the array with 4 elements: main, bre, long, and loop as the variables in this element. Now I'm telling Python, create a table called city, right? So create something called city, and the first part here is telling it to create a table. The second part here is saying with the following column, right? The third part is saying the name of the column. So in this name, the name of the column is streets with capital STREETS, right? And then populate that column with variables from the array streets, small letter streets, right? So this streets with all capital letter is just in an inverted in quotes is just the name of the column. This streets here is just what it's an array which I had already created. I'm just telling it to populate that column with the variables found in that array. Right? And I hope this works. Enter, and then if I type city, it gives me a single column table with column name streets, and underneath and in the column the street names are main, bre, long, and loop. Right. Okay. Let's say now I want to create a second column, right? Oh, what happened there? Sorry, I've gone up. I need to find where my cursor is now. Okay. Okay. Now what I want to do is create what do you call it? A new column called a second column, right? And let's call it blocks or something like that. What we want to do is create it for the add a column to the table city. Remember, if I type city, it's only got 1 column. So I want to add city, right? I just need to get the right with columns. And let's call it blocks. And then I need to populate this. I'm just going to populate it with an array. And let's populate with just a simple array 0, 1, 2, 3, which we learned earlier. MP array range 4, which is just an array 0, 1, 2, 3. Close bracket, enter, and it gives me a table with 2 columns. The first column being streets, second column being blocks, and blocks being populated with 0, 1, 2, and 3, because I just wanted a symbol array there, right, for illustration purpose. Now, if I go back to city, it doesn't have the 2 columns, because what I did in the previous command over here, which I'm highlighting it, I didn't save it under the table city, right? I just asked it to display it to the screen. So if I want to save it under the table city, I'd have to say something like city equals city with column, etc., and then enter. And then if I type city, now it's saved it with 2 columns. It saved the other second column in the table, and you'll see 2 columns. One is called city, and the other one is called blocks. Right. Let's see, what else do I want to do here? Right. Okay. I'm just seeing if we should do the last. Okay, so let me do just the last part, right? So I've got this table called city. I want to work out the number of rows in that table. city. So city.num underscore rows will tell me the number of rows, and the number of rows is 4, right? And if I say city.num underscore columns, it tells me the number of columns in the table, which is 2. Right. If I say city.labels, it tells me all the labels, in other words, the column names in the table. We have 2 columns. One column is called streets, the other column is called blocks, and it brings back the names of the column. Right. What do I want to do? I want this. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop here for today, and I will answer questions for the remaining amount of time. Let me just give a high-level overview of quickly what I did. So I continued from last lecture, and what I did was I introduced arrays in this lecture, and I showed how to convert a column from a table into an array, and then it allows you to do manipulation around that array, like finding averages. I don't know if I didn't do sums. I guess I'll count. I can show that to you in the next lecture. Then I also used that to, I took a table called NBA, and I wanted to do some find some information from that table. In this case, what the example that I did was I wanted to find the average salary difference between 2 teams, Golden State Warriors and Toronto Raptors. And so it allowed, what I did was I created a new table for Golden State, only containing information about Golden State Warrior players, and another table for the Toronto Raptors players. And then I took the average of the salary column by making it an array and working out the salaries for both. And I subtracted the one from the other to get the difference in average salary. So I went quite fast today, and the reason is, of course, it's a mini school. There's a lot to get through in very little time, but the advantage you have is you can go and listen to the lecture and work on it in your own space, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to open it up for questions and see if there's any questions before we sign off. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kanjo. I do not see any more questions, but maybe people came up with them now, because I think I answered a whole bunch of the questions in Q&A.
Okay.
At least I was trying to.
Okay.
Yes. Maybe yes. Let's give a minute or so to people to think of the question.
Okay.
But anyhow, yeah, I mean, like these lectures will be available in the NITheCS YouTube channel as soon as possible, probably by the end of today or tomorrow morning. So you can rewatch it. And I think in the description of the video, I also added the link to the GitHub repository where all these CSV files are located.
Yeah, thank you. I saw that too. Thanks a lot for that. So somebody was looking for that earlier, I think. Yeah. So Kyle did say he tried that table name .show in Jupyter Notebook, and it worked. Yeah, it will work for Jupyter Notebook, but not for the command window. How do we get the NP command to work? It's just, remember you imported NumPy as NP. Sorry, Ilya, you've already answered that. Perfect. I'm just going through the different questions. I don't think there is anything else.
I think there is a couple of more new questions.
Okay.
Can you just give a look? There is a question.
Command prompt only used to test code or do manipulation, you can do it for both, right? So in this case, I'm using it to test code. I mean, I think testing code and manipulation is the same thing. You can also write a code in a script file and then run it. Maybe I'll show it to you next lecture. That's quite easy. It's just saving a file where all your code is in a text file, and you're saving it as .py, and then you run it, and you save it in the correct folder, and then you run the name of the file. It will run everything in that file. You can also put all your outputs, instead of putting it to a screen, you can put it to a text file. I'll show that to you in the next lecture as well. Right. Then, good day, may I ask, why am I unable to, my import data sign? So you should have installed, you may have installed data science in the last lecture. Demakatso, I think we did that pip install data science as one of the commands that should have installed data science. Maybe you need to run through that again, right? Can one plot graphs here as well? Yes. Oh, sorry, Ilya, you go, you answer that.
Yeah, yes,
I'm not sure if you
That's
got
why
my
we need
email
the
regarding my. Pardon?
That's why we need the matplotlib. But of course, it's much nicer in Jupyter.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you got my email regarding my issue. So I did see it very late. I've been in lectures the whole day, so I saw there was an email, and I'll only be able to look at it either tomorrow or day after. I think I'm in all in meetings tomorrow as well. I will look at it as soon as I can. So if there's no other questions, then we can sign.
Maybe next time you might do a little bit about the arrays, because arrays sometimes is a difficult concept to grasp, because somebody is asking in the chat, please sir, I want you to explain the arrays, but I'm not sure whether you have time now or just next time you can do a little bit more of the kind of basic manipulations with the arrays.
Okay. I think of arrays as a vector, right? So there are elements in an array, and that means each element contains a certain information, right? So let's create an array, or make let's say body, right? So an array is just a list, right? And this list might contains all the different body parts, right? Legs, hands. I don't know what other body parts do we have. Head, chest. Let's stop there, right? So so all arrays is a list of certain stuff, elements, right? It can be either alphanumeric or numbers, or just purely numeric, or both, right? So I can create an array like this. Instead of having a string, I could just put in a number, right? So it's just a list, right? And this list is useful, particularly in whether it's strings or not, but I want to look at the way there is just concept of numbers to do various stuff, right? So let's say I have 4 bank accounts. Actually, let's do this. Let's say I have 4 bank accounts, right? And in my 4 bank accounts, make array, I have different balances: 123 rands, 50 rands, 23 rands, and 987 rands, right? So let's assume these are balances of my 4 bank accounts. Now I might want to see what happens. Let's say I have to pay out 100 rands to somebody, and instead of taking it out from all 4 accounts, instead of taking it out from one account, maybe I want to take it out from all 4 accounts, 25 rands from all accounts, right? And because 25 times 4 is equal to 100 rands. So what would be my new balance if I take out 25 rands from each account? So what this would do is it would go to each element in the array. So each element, by element I mean 123 is one element, 50 is another element, 23 is another element, and 987 is another element. You'll go to each element at the array and subtract 25, right? And if I do that, it tells me the new balance in the array, right? So it allows me to manipulate individual numbers in an array without having to type a lot of stuff out, right? But it allows me to also add 2 arrays together and subtract 2 arrays together, or do operation on each element of an array. In this case, I did an operation which is subtracting 25 on each element of an array, right? So let's say my wife's balance is, let's say her balance is 45, 20, so I'm just putting in numbers now. Okay. So now I want to work out what is the total household balance, amount of cash we have in the 4 accounts that we both hold, right? So my balance plus wife's balance will tell me what is the balance It's add each elements together, because there are each of the array balance is an array and wife balance is an array. Each of the array had 4 elements, and it added the first elements together. It added the second elements together or from each array. It added the third elements together from each array, and so on and so forth, right? So in this case, I could add 2 arrays and have it only do the operation on the element position. So the first elements that gets added together, second elements get added together, etc. I can't add 2 arrays of different size, right? So if I wanted to, let's say my son's balance, and he has a balance in 3 accounts, let's say 2, 5, and 7, I can't add my house balance to my son balance because there are different number of elements. One's got 4 elements and one's got 3 elements, right? But this is also useful, right? Because if I look at balance, which is my balance, I can also work out what is the sum of my balance, right? It tells me if I add up all the individual numbers, the sum will be 1,183. In other words, I have 1,183 rands distributed over 4 accounts, right? I think I can also do a count balance. It tells me, oh, sorry, not count. So I forgot what the name is, length, sorry, LEN. If I say LEN balance, it tells me, then it brings back the number of elements in this array. And remember, each element in this array is the balance of a bank account. So the length of the array should tell me the number of bank accounts, right? So I own 4 bank accounts. What about if I wanted the average balance on my bank accounts? In my 4 bank accounts, I would call the NumPy function average, and I would calculate that, which should be 1183 divided by 4, because 1183 is the sum of my balance, and I have 4 accounts, so my average balance in my accounts is 295 rands and 75 cents. So an array just allows you to manipulate a whole list of elements. I don't know what else I need to explain about array. Ilya, looking for help.
I also don't know. Okay. Probably I think that's good enough for the very basic introduction. Sure. Because, you know, kind of, if you go to the kind of like more hardcore NumPy array stuff, you can talk about, for example, how the reshaping works and how you can use some other fancy tricks with the NumPy arrays, because it's a very, very nice tool for the doing kind of built-in parallel data processing. But I don't know whether people need it within this.
Yeah, so I don't think we are going to be going there for now, right? I think that it'll be difficult to explain that functionality, but maybe in a further course that, you know, we could do something like that. We'll keep it basic for now. So I mean, I don't know how to do that in Python yet. So I generally program in MATLAB. So, you know, I'm going to keep Python teaching to the little part that I know. Any other comments? Any other?
I was trying to reply to them as quick as I can.
Okay.
Because yes, it seems like, you know, there is a space, really the space for the course like this, in the sense of like people are having questions, yeah, and the questions in principle addressable, and, you know, the fact that you're showing the thing which probably not many people have seen and used too much, you know, command line is, yeah, kind of a little bit old-fashioned, if I may say.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, many people might find out that, you know, if you need to do the calculation, so kind of in the high performance settings, you know, that's the only thing which you'll get. I mean, you will only get a command prompt. No one will give you a graphical, beautiful interface like in the Windows, so that you will get, you know, jumping around Windows. So you need to make comfortable of doing that thing.
And so I guess you could. So does that mean you can't use something like Jupyter Notebook to do fancy stuff?
Yeah. Okay. No, but, you know, kind of like for the high performance setting, nobody will give you Jupyter Notebook. I mean, like.
Oh, sure, because also I guess your connection to the high performance computer generally tends to be through like a command prompt window, right?
Yes, yeah, only. I mean, and bash scripts, you know, so kind of Linux level scripting language, and that's it.
Okay. So command window is actually great, right? So if you were my age, and you had started off with, you know, DOS operating system, you would have worked a lot with command windows.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. how did I create this Nba Salary CSV? Do we need to type it in one by one until the last row? No, Gloria, there is a table, there is a file called LEC, which you could download, which is, there's a GitHub repository, you can download it from there. It's all in that folder, right? I think Ilya had posted the link to the GitHub repository earlier.
Yes, I posted earlier and I will post it again just now because, oops.
Okay,
sorry.
Ilya, I'm sorry, Gloria, Ilya is posting a link to the GitHub repository where you can download the folder. And in the folder somewhere, if you go into, subfolder called LEC, you'll create, you'll find the CSV file. If you're taking 25 from each element, how do you adjust each element? Okay, great, Malcolm. So, okay, Ilya, you're answering that. Okay.
Yeah, just
so
array minus
25. Pardon?
It's array minus 25. It would just do the construction from every element.
Exactly. So I'm not sure where I am now. Kanshu type wife array equals 1 and create an array which he manipulated. Yeah, so I created a new array called wife array. Let's see what my wife array looks like. I created an array that looks like this. But it was called wife balance, and I had 4 elements in it, and these were the balance, let's say, of my wife's bank account, right? And so yeah, I inputted the details. Cool, thank you for that, Pierre. In arranging the buildings in New York City by completed dates, some buildings are complete. How does it decide the order? Okay, so Hector asked this question. When I ordered it by completed dates, you'll see some of the buildings were completed on the same date. So how does it decide between those buildings? That's just in the order of it finds it in the original table. So if it read in the original table, let's say 3 buildings that are in a certain order and they all completed in the same order, then it'll bring it back in that order, right? So it reads it as it is and brings it back in the same order. Great, so answered live. I'm a statistics BSc degree holder. What is the first thing I should know to start using Python programming language? So there are 2 things, right? One is learning the basics of Python syntax. And the second part is learning just programming. So if you're a BSc degree holder, you might have done some R programming. And if you've done some programming, it makes learning any other language quite easy or easier, right? And so what you do with Python programming, if you know how to program already, is to then go and listen to, let's say, something like my videos, or there are lots of resources online that will teach you Python programming. Now, if you don't know a programming language, what you want to do is to learn how to program. And if you want to learn Python at the same time, the best is to look for courses that teaches you how to code, how to learn programming, or how to code using Python. The house balance should be 962 plus. Okay, so let's look at so my house balance is 40. So wife balance is 45, 234, 98, and 23. These are the 4 bank accounts balance. My balance is 123, 50, 23, and 987. So house balance would be 45 plus 123. Let's do that actually. 45, the first element and the first element of the 2 arrays. Then the second element of the house balance is the second element of the first array and the second element of the second array. So it's adding each elements of the array together, right? It's not summing up the elements within the array. It's summing up the first element of my wife's balance with my balance. It's or my first element of my array, right? It's doing that for the second element. It's doing that for the third element separately. Does that make sense, Malcolm? Great. Okay. So things are going fast there, so I can't. Okay. So Gloria, can I come? Or you want to create your own CSV file. So the easiest way to create your own CSV file, Gloria, is to create it on Excel or using text, what's it called? Textbook, text, notepad. You can create it on Notepad and save it as a CSV file, or you can create it on Excel and save it as a CSV file. So I don't know if I missed any. How do we remember the strings instructions to use? Rosa, good question. So the instructions or the strings or the function names, what you do is you first of all, you write it down, and it's just like speaking a language, right? So how do you know that the word how and how the word do and the word we, etc., is through repeated practice of that language. So as you practice Python more and more, you start figuring out what are the words that you must use or the functions that you must use, and you don't think about it any longer. Initially, what you might want to do is write it down on some page somewhere, or you learn, or what I do is if I can't think of a function, I will search it on Google, right? Okay, so, okay. Okay, I don't see any other new questions.
Okay, and also we should be probably cognizant of the time, so that it's almost 3:30. So I think we can wrap up for today, and kind of, and the general recommendation, many questions which the people ask, they can just try to Google. If you try to do things afterwards and something doesn't work, just maybe try to Google.
I do that, and Ilya is perfectly right? So everything I learned from, I taught myself Python in the last 2 weeks, right? And I've been teaching Python here, and I've been teaching Python somewhere else. And a lot of what I've done is by Googling, Google searching on Google. I shouldn't say Googling. And what I did was I found the Data 8 website, and I started using that. I found other functionalities. So when plot didn't work using the data science library, I just went and Googled how do I plot using Python, and a whole lot of resources came out on how I could plot using Python. So Google's got lots of things. What we're going to do is we are giving you the basic functionalities on how to start with Python, but as you want to go along, you should start searching on Google. There really is a lot of resources. I think we should close it down, right?
Yeah, I think we can wrap it up. Yeah, I need to thank you, Kandru, for the wonderful session. Yes, thank you very much. And the recording will be available hopefully later today or tomorrow. So kind of the link I already supplied in the chat several times, but you can always search for the NITheCS YouTube channel, where we have all these lectures, all the mini schools, and all the seminars which are organized by the National Institute for Theoretical and Computational Science. So please, and over there within the description, I added the GitHub link to the data file, so that if you lost the link here, it will be still in the description of the YouTube video, so that you can re-download it again.
Cool.
Okay.
Have a good week, everyone, and practice. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.